The single biggest mistake a caring teacher makes is not that they come into a classroom with a smile on their face. It's not that they were caring to begin with. No, the single biggest mistake that a caring teacher makes is that they confuse being nice with being kind. And it's a big, big trap to come into a classroom with the sole purpose of being nice. Those of you who have fallen into the trap of wanting to appear nice to your students, let me show you how that affects your classroom management challenge so profoundly. A few years ago, I was charged with the responsibility of running a high school. The year before, the year 11 and 12 students had performed extremely poorly in their academic results. And I had to diagnose the problem and then come up with a game plan on how to fix it. One of the things I realized was that our students were not using their spare time properly. They were being very unproductive and wasting a lot of time that could have been spent studying. So I devised a rule that students were not allowed to go to the shops or leave the premises at all during free periods. And if all their lessons had finished and they had just frees at the end of the day, I didn't let them go home until they were signed off by every teacher to determine that they were up to date and that their attitude in class was of an exemplary standard. As you can imagine, the students were furious. They hated the rule more than anything that you could ever imagine. And they rightly pointed out that just about every school in Australia allows its students to do whatever they want during free periods. I mean, they're called free periods. You're free to do as you want. So you can imagine the blowback, not just from students, but from parents as well. In a matter of weeks, I went from being a respected member of staff and a leader of students to being hated. The controversy was getting to me, and nice Michael would have given up. But by this stage in my career, I realized that nice Michael was actually not a good thing. And I stuck to my guns. And I can't wait to tell you about what happened as a result of this very plan. But before I do, let's just go over some of the habits that a nice teacher employs. Unfortunately, I have to put my hand up. I have employed all of these bad habits over my career. One such habit is giving unlimited chances to certain students, warning after warning with no consequence. Another one is letting them know that if they behave tomorrow, I'll let them off today's punishment. Another is not actually doing the paperwork, following through with a consequence that I had given, hoping that it would just go away. And finally, it is avoiding confrontation with difficult parents and telling myself, what do I need that for? I'll just let this go. I don't want the parents giving me a call. Not today. And here's what I learned. All of these excuses are grounded in common sense. Difficult students need patience. Difficult students have probably had very, very bad experiences with teachers in the past. And to gain their trust, you need to be patient with them. You need to develop trust over time. And difficult parents? Who wants to be engaged in warfare when you've got a classroom to teach? It totally throws you. It's not great for your mental health. What do you need it for? All of these excuses are easy to defend, but guess what? They add to the problem substantially. I discovered that my priorities were all wrong. You see, if I was a tutor instead of a classroom teacher, that patience that I showed to difficult students would actually be a really, really good strategy. In a one-on-one situation, being patient is a very good idea. Be systematic. Be measured. Take your time. Invest in the relationship. Brilliant. But guess what? You're a classroom teacher. You're not a tutor. And you've got more than one student to consider when you're making an approach. If you are compromising the well-being of your 29 students, because you're investing patience in that one student, you're actually doing yourself a huge disservice, and it's going to cost you with behavior management. But here's another thing to really consider. Of all the students in your class, it's that difficult student that needs the predictability. It's that difficult student that needs a quiet, calm classroom. It's that difficult student that thrives with structure. It's worth revisiting these two words, nice and kind, and really determining where the difference is. So what is the difference between being nice and being kind? Nice avoids discomfort. Kind accepts discomfort. Nice keeps the peace. Kind builds the person. When you let something go, when you decide I'm going to be a little bit more lenient today, when you just want to show empathy for your class and give them unlimited chances, the room doesn't see that as compassion. You know what they see that as? They see it as an opening, as an opportunity to take over the class. Either knowingly or unknowingly, they see it as a weakness on behalf of the teacher, a weakness that they can exploit. And they often do. This is not a character flaw in your students. This is just what happens in a room where the rules are dictated based on your whims for the day. Now, I want to say something that many teachers don't say out loud, but I'm really happy to say it. I have always wanted to be liked by my students. Now, this is kind of a bad thing to say nowadays. It's like, don't say that. But I'm unapologetic here. I've always wanted to be liked by my students. My favorite teachers growing up were teachers I liked, I adored, I would do anything for. I'd walk over hot coals for. They were inspiring figures. And I joined the teaching fraternity because I wanted to inspire my students. So unapologetically, I say that I have always wanted to be liked and I continue to want to be liked. But here's a hard truth. Students don't like the teachers that let everything go. These very teachers end up confusing them. What they actually trust over time is a teacher who is calm, process-driven, predictable. A teacher who shares their vision with the classroom, who is very clear what they're trying to build, and takes them for a journey along that very mission. And this works the same way with parents. Remember when I talked about wanting to avoid confrontation with parents? Parents want to be filled in when their child is misbehaving in class. They want to be told, but they want to be told in a certain way. They don't want to be told in a way that imputes their child as being a bad kid. This is the way you tell a parent about their child's behavior. I'm dedicated in getting your child to reach this point. At the moment, there are some obstacles in the way that I think is worth discussing, but I am absolutely dedicated in working with you to try to manage this issue and to get your child thriving in school. Please work with me on trying to address these issues so that progress can be made. This is not a confrontation. This is a partnership. You've sold it in a completely different way. And so this is a way that a kind teacher can operate without falling for the trap of being nice. A nice teacher avoids that confrontation. A kind teacher sees it as an opportunity to do what they set out to do, which is get that child acting more appropriately and progressing very steadily. So let's get back to that story. I imposed, let's use the word imposed, a new rule. The new rule was designed to get those students working more productively. I didn't allow them to leave to go to the shops during the day. I didn't allow them to leave when they had no more lessons left on their schedule, unless the teachers signed them off as being up to date. And yes, there was pushback. And yes, there were riots in those early days. And yes, there were times where I just wanted to raise that white flag and say, enough is enough. You were right. Every school does it that way. I'm picking on you. I've got to stop this idea. This idea is just too extreme. But after a few weeks of sticking to my guns and ensuring that teachers didn't blindly sign, but did so only when the student really deserved it, guess what happened? Those study spaces that I'd set aside for those kids who had free periods to go to study, they were being used. And free periods became known as study sessions because that's the way they were used. And all of a sudden, students were not behind. They ensured that they weren't behind because they wanted those signatures at the end of a school day. And the academic turnaround was unbelievable. The marks they got in year 11 and 12 were incredible. And they got it. They saw that it was this change, a change they railed against, that was the deciding reason. It was the inspiration for how well they achieved. And guess what I did once they received their unbelievable results? Beaming when they got their results. I told them to come to my office. So I had all the year 11s and 12s in my office. And I said to them, it's because of this rule and it's because of me that I've stopped you from going to the shops during free periods all this time. I'm going to make it up to you right now. Come on, let's go. We're going to the shops. And we walked over to the shops during the school day and I let them buy whatever they want on my own dime, not even the school's dime. I said, I'm paying for this. And they got a whole bounty of food, brought it back to their common room, and had a party. And I realized that being nice deprives them from this amazing opportunity. Being nice actually does them a huge disservice. A kind teacher wants the best for their students. A kind teacher wants to take bad habits and replace them with good habits. And to do that, there needs to be a little bit of tough love. There needs to be discipline on the behalf of the teacher, or in this case, the head of high school. Too many teachers aim for their students to one day say, he or she was a really nice person. I don't want my students to say, I was a nice person. And it's not because I don't want to be a nice person. It's not because I'm a bad person. But it's nowhere near the bar I want to set when it comes to my appraisal. The bar that I want to set is I want to be a great teacher. I want to be recognized as a great teacher. And to be a great teacher, you have to graduate from being nice to being courageous. You have to genuinely do what's in your students' best interests, even when it means risking blowback. That courage is not something you can rely on willpower alone to sustain. That is exactly what the calm method is for. It is a system that makes consistency possible on even your hardest days, not just your best ones. And if you have not watched my very first video yet, it's linked below. Tell me in the comments, where do you see yourself right now? Are you the teacher who has been rolling back consequences and telling yourself it's all in the name of just being patient? Or are you ready to hold that line? One day, your students won't remember your worksheets that you presented them. They won't remember half your lessons. They won't necessarily remember any of the skills you taught them. But they'll remember whether there was this one adult who cared enough to hold the line. Holding the line and being kind were never in competition. The line was the kindness. I am Michael, and I will see you next week.